Good morning. My name is Dr. Larry Force, and I'm a professor of psychology at Mount St. Mary College, and I am one of the directors of our Center on Aging and Disability Policy, along with Dr. Jeffrey Kahana. So here we are. I think it's week 12 now. What started off as an informal conversation has evolved into a regular meeting, a regular exchange on Wednesdays at 10 o'clock. And how this started is that 3 years ago, we were awarded, our center was awarded a grant, a significant grant from the New York State Developmental Disability Planning Council. And it was to train mindfulness-based training. It was to provide mindfulness-based training for family members that have children with special needs. So as soon as I became aware of this, I reached out to my longtime friend and colleague, Elaine Sproat, and asked her if she would be interested in being involved in this project. And she helped, be the architect of the grant, and came on as a project director. And we put together a team, and here we are, 3 years later. We started off with small groups, and our charge was to be able to reach 1,000 families. So we know that we were doing good things. It was based upon the Vanderbilt Kennedy model at Vanderbilt University. I'm just reading an email that I ended up seeing here, like a text about, could I send somebody the invite, and I'll do that. And so we're moving along and we're doing good things, and people are feeling really good about what we're doing. But our goal was to be present for families, but also to be able to reach 1,000 families. So the second year, we ended up doing a train-the-trainer model, and moving through the state and making some really good connections and friends as we're launching this throughout the state. And then COVID happened. So we had all this content information, but we really didn't have a way to be able to disseminate it. So in an informal discussion with Peggy Pisano, who sits here as the school psychologist from a behavioral perspective, and Lisa Nathan, who sits here as a parent advocate and meditator, we had an informal discussion about how could we get this material out. And the next thing you know, we started this platform called ProActive Caring School Exchange. And with that, what started off as an informal discussion, now we're in our 12th week of this, because we were only going to go to April. And then we decided that with schools being closed for the whole time, we would go all the way through to the end of school. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce Peggy Pisano, who is the school psychologist, and Lisa Nathan, who is the parent advocate meditator. And with that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask Lisa to welcome our guest today, because the theme is how to add mindfulness to enhance the summer experience. Because again, it's a two-pronged approach, one bringing in the mindfulness approach, and introduce Carla.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa. Well, my son Gabriel has been blessed with many, many great teachers. He's 19 years old now. And Carla has been one of them. And actually, she's one of his current teachers now. We go way back because, many, many paths cross in this area, in this community of special education. So Carla is one of his teachers right now. And during this whole lockdown pandemic world we live in now, she and her colleague have created this incredible structure and community for Gabriel and his class. We get on our Zoom calls twice a week, and it's just amazing. And I think I've learned so much by getting to see Gabriel interact with his teachers and his fellow classmates, which is something I'm normally not privy to. So that's like really been an amazing experience. And to see Carla, just throw out her positive energy all the time and just send like great videos for everybody. So, Carla's just like such an incredibly dedicated, positive teacher. So that's Carla.
Well, we'd like to thank you for that introduction. And I know that when we talked about bringing people to the table, there was no doubt about it that Carla was on the top of your list because of the fact that, Carla, not only do you represent and have a presence in the special ed network, but you're living this experience. You know, the idea of how to go about shifting from, you know, face-to-face training to now to online training. So, you know, offline last night we talked, and the four of us talked, and the idea was, what's the message that, you know, that we'd like to be able to, you know, generate today? And one of the things that we talked about is we talked about the reality of what it's really like. We hear a lot about the impact on the student. We hear a lot about the impact on the parent, you know, with you know, readjusting and reconfiguring to the COVID experience. But what about the teacher? So Carla, with that, is it possible that you can just give like a you know, a very quick, brief overview of who you are, how you ended up doing, you know, taking this career path, and where you are right now, and as far as what role you're playing in the special ed world?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And Lisa, thank you for those kind words. You're way too kind. And yes, we do go way back from our PTO days. And it's always been a pleasure knowing you and Gabriel and meeting your family through Gabriel. So it's always a pleasure. I've been working at BOCES for about 12 or 13 years now. I started a little bit later. I stayed home with my two children who are now 22 and 25. And I was volunteering for my daughter's then kindergarten class, and her teacher said to me, you really should go for special ed. You really have the patience and just the kindness and empathy to do it. And I listened to her, and I'm so glad I did. I was brought to BOCES through a friend of mine, and I started as a one-on-one. And when a teaching position opened up, I was lucky enough to be hired. And I've always been very involved in mindfulness and meditation. And I always have been very interested in bringing it to my students. And that has been a wonderful thing and a little bit of a challenge, because a lot of students can't really sit still. They need that structure. They need to have something to do and for them to just sit and then sit and be quiet, it's really hard to do. So we started mindfulness. I would do it. I started in the summertime when I would work in the summer. And then I would bring it to my classrooms in September, and we would start, for each new class, I have to only start with a minute because many students just can't sit and just be. A lot of times I'll have a guided meditation on. I look at the kids and see how they're reacting. We have one student right now presently who has a really hard time with it. So I try to give him different things, maybe coloring while the rest of us are sitting and closing their eyes. It's even hard for them to close their eyes sometimes. But it's been a wonderful thing, and they have really started over time as we do it more and more and it becomes routine to them. They really like that time. We usually do it on Wednesdays. We call it Zen Wednesdays because they also, I have to give a shout out to Happy Buddha Yoga in Goshen. The owner, Charlene, has been gracious enough to give our kids a free yoga class every Wednesday. And the kids absolutely love that. I think that's a little bit easier for them to do because they're moving. And there's also talking going on. It's really hard for one of my students to be quiet. He likes to talk and he doesn't like anything quiet. But yoga has been great. And it's just been a really positive experience for our students. As far as BOCES goes, they do every once in a while, they do have a mindfulness class, which I always take, which is always very well attended. I want to say they have one each half of the year. So there will be one in the fall and then one in the spring. I'm not really sure who they get to do that, but that's always worthwhile. I know mindfulness is big in some districts. I was telling Lisa that Newburgh has a mindfulness for their teachers. I think it's called Mindful Mondays. And someone in Newburgh, I'm not sure who it was, thought it was necessary for the teachers to have that kind of grounding. And I find that my colleagues, it is very stressful, just like it is stressful for parents. It's stressful for the teachers. I think one thing that comes to mind is you're never away from the computer, so you're always kind of working. You really have to mentally say, I'm gonna move away from the computer. Finally, I think I move away at around 6:37 at night. But if I'm up, I can't sleep, I'm right back on the computer. Let me just see if a student, emailed and is having a question about a lesson, or let me see if they posted something. Because some of our students are having a really hard time not seeing their peers. One thing that was interesting to Tammy, my co-teacher, and I, is we didn't realize how we took for granted how social our students are. And they really miss seeing one another. So when we do our Google Meets twice a week, we had the choice of conducting it any way we wanted. And we didn't really know if we should go with instruction at that time, as we found the majority of our students were just missing each other. So we kind of kept it social. But I try to incorporate our Zen Wednesdays every Wednesday by adding a simple yoga or a movement video or meditation video. So it's just something I always had an interest in, and I'm happy and looking forward to sharing all this information that I'm getting from you guys with our counselors, our speech teachers, because we tend to just incorporate everything. We're very well-rounded. So even our speech teachers and our OT and our counselors are putting mindful things, or just something to be reflective. For example, our counselor just had an activity that I think it was reflection and review. So it comes up in our day constantly.
Well, as you're talking, probably about 8 or 9 months ago, Lisa and Peggy, joined the team, and they both have the commonality is the strong advocate, passionate advocate. The difference is the fact that they come from different worlds. Because Lisa always, which I loved in our early discussions, Lisa said, "Look, I'm highly trained. I go in, I'm prepared. I go into these IEP meetings, and I open up the door and I see, the team sitting there, and next thing I know, I become almost frozen." So the partnership between Lisa and Peggy, the initial intent was to be able to work with school districts, maybe through in-service training. We were running through the state doing train the trainer, but we weren't asking school districts to, put out a whole day, but, put aside a whole day. And the idea was maybe we do some in-service training. But what was the outcome? Wouldn't it be wonderful if at the end of their involvement with school districts, that every IEP process would start with a moment of meditation? Wouldn't that be great? And then COVID came in, and the next thing you know, we're shifting gears. But I really liked what you said, because of the fact that this idea of Zen Wednesdays, this idea of mindful Mondays. I mean, I think we're at the right place at the right time. And just that idea, that image of every IEP process starting with a meditation, a quiet moment, and that's one of the things that we've also, addressed in this series here. We talk about meditation, the power of the pause, the power of staying in the moment, but we're not talking necessarily, I mean, it'd be wonderful if the image was yoga mats and 45-minute, practices. But everybody that I've talked to that has a meditation practice, including Lisa, has always talked about the fact that it begins very small, 30 seconds, a minute.